Welcome to another episode of Fundamentals of Project Management. Meet Betty. Betty was just promoted at her job working for Super Toy World. Her first task was to complete a big project designing a new stuffed horse. While overseeing the project, she assigned the employees to certain tasks and everything seemed to be going smoothly. That was until Betty realized that she needed glass eyes for the horse and yarn for the tail and mane. Super Toy World does not carry either of those materials, and therefore, she cannot finish the project without obtaining them from an outside source. It was at that time that Betty learned about an important area of her company, project procurement management, which explains how Super Toy World works with outside suppliers. What exactly is project procurement management? Well, it is collaboration with outside suppliers in order to obtain or purchase goods and services for projects. These relationships are often created based on a contract so that the needed items or services are received on time and meet the standards requested by the purchasing company. Procurement planning is the process of deciding what to buy, when and from which source. During the procurement planning process, the procurement method is assigned and the expectations for fulfillment of procurement requirements determined. The product of this planning is the procurement plan. The next step to planning procurement is to conduct the procurement. Conducting procurements is where you make sure your potential customers have an opportunity to bid in fairness. This means obtaining seller responses, selecting a seller, and awarding a contract. The procurement management plan provides information that guides the bid and award process. For the bid process, it identifies the various roles and responsibilities as well as the procurement documents that will be used. The legal term used to indicate a legal relationship is privity. If you sign a contract with a seller, you have contract privity. However, if the seller signs a contract with a subcontractor, you have no legal privity with the subcontractor. Control procurements means managing procurement relationships, monitoring contract performance, and making changes and corrections to contracts as needed. During this process, the seller must meet the procurement requirements, and the buyer must perform according to the terms of the contract. This includes appropriate and timely payments and also contract change management. Thus, you can see that both the buyer and the seller will work with the procurement agreement to ensure that both parties are fulfilling their contractual commitments. Throughout the contract performance period, change requests will likely be needed. These need to follow the change process outlined in the contract and go through the project's integrated change control process. The buyer is concerned only with those changes that affect the contractual terms. If the seller is making changes that are transparent to the buyer and don't affect any contractual obligations, those changes are not documented. You should know that when closing contracts, you need to make sure all claims are resolved. You should also review the entire procurement process so you can learn from the current procurement to improve future procurements. Is the process of completing each project procurement. It supports the close project or phase process, since it involves verification that all work and deliverables were acceptable. Early termination of a contract is a special case of procurement closure, which can result from a mutual agreement of both parties, or for convenience of the buyer if provided for in the contract. The rights and responsibilities of the parties in the event of an early termination are contained in a terminations clause of the contract. However, based upon those contract terms and conditions, the buyer may have to compensate the seller for seller's preparations and for any completed and accepted work related to the terminated part of the contract. That ends Project Procurement Management by Micah and Alvin.
Created using Powtoon.